You are sitting in a room with no windows and you have been sitting here for 6 hours and nobody has told you why. No one has spoken to you. People have spoken to you, politely, in careful, precise English that is somehow more unsettling than if they had shouted. A man in a blue uniform brought you water at hour 2. A woman with a clipboard came in at hour 4 and asked you to confirm your name and your passport number and your date of arrival and the address of the hotel you were staying at. You confirmed all of it. She wrote it down. She thanked you. She left. Nobody has told you what you did. You are 27 years old. Your name is Leo. You came to Tokyo for 11 days. You've been here for 3 of them. You had a plan. Temples in the morning, food in the afternoon, the kind of aimless evening wandering that only works in cities built for it, and Tokyo is very much built for it. You had a good camera and a list of places written in a notes app, and a confident, uncomplicated sense that this trip was going to be exactly what you needed after a year that had been the opposite of exactly what you needed. That was 72 hours ago. Now you are in a detention room in a police facility in a ward of Tokyo you did not know existed before a uniformed officer appeared at your elbow in a convenience store and said, with great courtesy, that he would need you to come with him. You went with him. Because what else do you do? Because he was polite, and you were raised to cooperate with authority, and because some part of you, the American part that grew up watching enough movies to have absorbed a basic script for these situations, assumed it would be cleared up quickly. Misunderstanding, wrong person. 5 minutes, maybe 10. That was 6 hours ago. Here is what you know about Japan before this trip. You did research. You were not the kind of person who arrived somewhere without research. You knew about the shoes, the removing of them before entering certain spaces. You knew about the chopstick rules, not sticking them upright in rice, not passing food directly chopstick to chopstick. You knew to queue, to not eat while walking, to keep your voice down on trains, to carry cash because cash is still king in a way that surprises visitors who thought the world had universally moved on. You knew the surface rules, the visible ones. The ones travel blogs write about with cheerful listicle energy and photos of people bowing in front of shrines. You did not know the other ones. The ones nobody writes about because they are so deeply embedded in the structure of how this place works that the people who live here do not think of them as rules. They think of them as reality. The way water does not think of itself as wet. The door opens. A man comes in. He is not in uniform. He is in a suit, gray, neat, the suit of someone who makes decisions. He sits across from you at the table, and he places a folder on the table, and he folds his hands on top of it, and he looks at you with an expression you cannot read. Not hostile, not warm. Simply present. Assessing, he says. Mr. Leo, thank you for your patience, you say. Can you tell me what's happening? He says, of course. I would like to ask you some questions first if that is acceptable. In Japan, if that is acceptable is not really a question. You are beginning to understand this. You say, sure. He opens the folder. He looks at a page inside it. He says, you were in the convenience store on Kenji Street at approximately 9:45 this evening. You say, yes. He says, you made a phone call while inside the store. You say, yes, I called my mother. I'm 11 hours ahead of home. She was awake. I had signal. I didn't think it was a problem. He writes something. He says, you were speaking loudly. You open your mouth. You close it. You think about the call. You were standing near the back of the store by the refrigerated drinks. You were telling your mother about the temple you visited that morning. You now realize with a specific creeping clarity, speaking at a volume you would consider normal. American normal. The normal of a person who grew up in a country where talking on the phone in a public space is just talking on the phone in a public space. You say, I didn't realize I was being loud. He nods. Writes something. He says, you also took photographs inside the store. You say, of the food, the packaging. I thought it was interesting. I've never seen some of those products before. He says, did you ask permission? You say, to photograph food in a convenience store. He looks at you, not unkindly. The look of someone waiting for you to arrive at the answer yourself. You say, no, I didn't ask permission. He writes something. He says, and before you left the store, you held the door open for a customer entering. You say, yes. He says, you held the door and gestured for them to enter ahead of you. You say, yes, I was being polite. He says, the customer felt you were drawing attention to them, creating an obligation. It caused them discomfort. You sit with that for a moment. The specific disorienting experience of being told that the thing you did to be polite was the thing that caused a problem. You held a door. In America, holding a door is a gesture so basic, so reflexively kind, that not holding it would be the rude act. You say, I didn't mean to make anyone uncomfortable, he says. I understand that. He closes the folder. He looks at you. Mr. Leo, may I explain something to you? You say, please, he says. Japan has a concept. We call it meiwaku. It means, roughly, causing trouble or inconvenience to others. It is not simply a courtesy. It is a foundational social principle. To cause meiwaku, even accidentally, is considered a serious matter, not because the individual act is large, because the accumulation of such acts across a society affects everyone. You say, I caused meiwaku, he says. In the store, you caused meiwaku 3 times in approximately 12 minutes. You say nothing. He says, the noise of the phone call disturbed other customers. The photographs made the staff uncomfortable because they did not know your intention and could not ask without causing their own meiwaku by confronting you. The door gesture made the entering customer feel singled out in a way they did not invite. You say, none of those things are illegal. He says, no. You say, then why am I here? He says, because the store staff called to report a foreign national whose behavior was causing repeated disturbance, and because in Japan, when a report is made, it is taken seriously, and because when the officer approached you in the store, you became visibly agitated and raised your voice. You remember that. You remember the officer appearing and saying, come with me, and you saying, why? What did I do? What's going on? Your voice climbing with each question because you were confused and a little scared and you were operating without knowing it on American rules. In America, you have the right to know why you are being approached. In America, demanding an explanation is assertive, not aggressive. In that store, in that moment, it read differently. You say, I wasn't trying to be aggressive. I was confused. He says, I understand that now. He pauses. This is actually why I'm here instead of the officer who brought you in, to understand. You look at him, you say, so what happens now? He says, that depends. He opens the folder again. He slides a single sheet of paper across the table. It is a form, in Japanese, with an English translation below each field. It is an acknowledgement form, an admission that you caused a disturbance and an agreement to adhere to local behavioral standards for the remainder of your stay. He says, this is not a criminal record. It does not affect your passport or your ability to travel. It is documentation that this conversation occurred and that you have been informed. You look at the form. You say, if I sign this, I can go. He says, you pick up the pen, then you stop. You say, can I ask you something first? He says, of course. You say, the customer at the door. If I had done nothing, just walked out, not held the door, that would have been better, he says. For them, yes. They did not need your help. Assuming they did implied they were not capable. Say, but in my country not holding the door would be rude, he says. Yes. You say, so the same action is polite in one place and inconsiderate in another, he says. Yes. You say, how is anyone supposed to know that? He looks at you. And for the first time in the conversation, his expression shifts. Not to warmth exactly, to something adjacent to it. The look of someone who finds a question genuinely interesting. He says, that is the correct question. You sign the form. He slides it back. He closes the folder. He stands. He says, your hotel is a 20-minute taxi ride, and there will be one waiting at the front of the facility. He says, enjoy the remainder of your stay. He says it without irony. He means it, you think. He actually means it. You step outside at 11:43 at night. Tokyo is doing what Tokyo does at midnight, which is existing at a volume and a density that cities elsewhere do not manage at midnight. The street in front of the facility is lit and moving and smells like rain that happened an hour ago and food from somewhere nearby. You stand on the pavement and you breathe. You think about the word meiwaku. You turn it over, causing trouble to others, not dramatically, not intentionally, just existing at full American volume in a space that operates at a different frequency. Taking up room in the way you were taught was normal, and finding out that normal is local. That what you were raised to call courtesy has an entire other definition 2 time zones away. That politeness is not universal, it is geographic, it is historical. It is built from a specific set of decisions made by a specific group of people over centuries, and it looks completely different depending on where you are standing when you learn it. The taxi is where they said it would be. You get in. The driver does not speak. You do not speak. The city moves past the windows. Bright and ordered, and full of people navigating a social system so intricate and so internalized that they do not experience it as a system at all. They experience it as decency, as consideration, as the basic minimum required to share space with other human beings without making their day harder. You have been making people's days harder for 3 days without knowing it, not maliciously, not carelessly even, just uninformedly. Operating on an instruction set that was never designed for this environment and never told you it had limits. You get back to the hotel at 12:15. The lobby is quiet. The staff member at the front desk sees you come in and nods with the precise calibrated nod of someone who is acknowledging your existence without making it an event. You nod back, smaller than you would have nodded 3 days ago, more considered. You go to your room. You sit on the edge of the bed. You open your notes app, the one with the list of temples and restaurants and things you plan to see. You scroll past all of it, and you open a new note. You type things I thought were universal. You sit there for a while. The list is longer than you expected. And the longer it gets, the more you understand that the 6 hours in that room were not the point. The room was just the container. The point was everything that led to it. Every assumption you carried onto the plane. Every behavior you never examined because you never had to. Because at home it worked. Because at home everyone was running the same software and nobody flagged an error. Here, the error got flagged. Here, 6 hours in a windowless room did what 11 days of temple visiting was never going to do. It cracked something open. Not painfully, not dramatically, just open. You close the Notes app. You set your alarm. Tomorrow you have a temple in the morning. You will take no photographs inside it, unless you see a sign that says photographs are permitted. You will keep your phone in your pocket. You will not hold doors for strangers unless they are elderly or clearly struggling. You will eat before you leave the hotel, so you are not walking while eating. You will speak quietly. You will take up exactly the space you need, and not 1 centimeter more. You will, in other words, try to learn the rules you didn't know existed. Not because you are afraid of another 6 hours in that room, because the man in the gray suit asked you to enjoy the remainder of your stay and meant it. Because a country that takes Mewaku seriously enough to have a word for it, seriously enough to send someone in a suit to explain it to a confused American at 10 o'clock at night, is a country that has thought carefully about what it means to share space with other people. And you have been sharing space with people your entire life without thinking carefully about it at all. You lie back on the bed, built on 10,000 rules you will never fully learn, and a principle underneath all of them that is simpler than any rule. Don't make it harder for the people around you. That's it. That's the whole system. 10,000 rules that are all, at the bottom, the same instruction. You think about home. You think about the noise and the big gestures and the doors held open and the phone calls in convenience stores and the immediate reflexive way you have always moved through the world, taking up space, filling silence, assuming that visible kindness is always welcome. You wonder what the people around you, at home, in your country, in the spaces you have moved through your entire life, would say if you asked them honestly whether your presence ever made their day slightly harder. You think maybe you don't need to ask. You think maybe you already know. You close your eyes. In the morning you will go to the temple. You will stand in a space that has been standing for 300 years and has absorbed the presence of millions of people who understood something you were only beginning to understand, that reverence is not a feeling. It is a practice. It is the daily, deliberate choice to move through the world as if the world belongs to everyone in it. Not just to you. Never just to you.